move things to the ballot for the voters to decide. If things are to stay within the status quo, then they are voted no on the ballot. As leaders and elected officials, they should motivate the voters, as we know that voter turnout during special elections is low. So we should motivate our voters to get out there and participate in the democratic process. With that said, I'll move on to some housekeeping issues. As you know, the public input is at the end, as I mentioned earlier. How does the committee feel about moving it to the beginning for next meeting? Are we good with moving it to the beginning? Okay, excellent. And then as we start to accept public input, if you could just state your name and the address for the record, we can start. So, last meeting we left off in our discussion of a hybrid model of a school committee. I believe the consensus was to discuss what a fully appointed school committee would look like if we wanted to propose that to the city council. As I think in previous meetings we had talked about potential guardrails or criteria we would want in specific categories of people that we would want appointed. So for example, somebody who has financial background, a lawyer, somebody from facilities, a current or former educator, mental health counselors, community members. So just to kick off the meeting, what is everybody's position on what guardrails we would like to see on the appointed school committee, and how would we want to execute the changes in the charter if there are any?
Well, first we need to decide, we discuss the different numbers of people to get school. We're going 7, 9, what are we looking at? Because that would then decide how we're going to make up the school committee. You know, if we're going fully appointed. Is it 9 where we have 3 parents, 3 teachers, legal, facility, finance, or yes, we need to sit right up against it. There we go. Sorry about that. Usually people can hear me without a microphone. So what are we looking at? Are we looking at the same 7 with different backgrounds, or I mean that's something I think we need to discuss first.
I mean, I think we could talk about what a 9-member council committee would look like and what a 7-member committee would look like, right? And then talk about who does the appointment. Is it the mayor, the city council, and then who confirms? But that's up to us to decide how we would want to do that. And ultimately, if it were me, I'd do 9 members, but.
And I'd just like to take off question right now. We shouldn't require a lawyer to be appointed to the school committee. They'll have their own legal counsel, and they'd forever end up fighting if there were a lawyer. The lawyer was still paying a lawyer, so I'm back away.
Okay. Any other guardrails we would like to see?
Well, I mean, I would question generally, is it for us to have a specific composition of the school committee? And then kind of, you know, oh, okay. Is it for us to be that specific if we were to make that recommendation to say 3 have to be this, 2 have to be this? Because then if the council did decide to put that forward and that were to pass, you know, then it becomes very narrow. Oh, one of the parents left. Okay, well then we can only appoint a parent, and there might be somebody who's more qualified or more desirable of the council. So I don't see that it's our role to suggest, you know, the recipe for what the school committee should be, you know, if it were to go that far. I mean, I don't think we do that on any other boards where you say on the planning board you have to have an architect, an engineer, you know.
I will say though, if that was me,
Just to be clear, so this discussion is this is time we're not going to be voting on anything like an appointed school committee. It's simply, if that was the recommendation, what should the guardrails be so that some attorney or somebody can draw that up for this group?
Correct.
Well, I'd suggest what I suggested last time, if that were the case. I mean, I still am opposed to a fully appointed school committee. There's nothing that has really convinced me otherwise yet that I've heard or read. But that being said, if that was the recommendation, I would say that some type of sunset legislation or ability to, in the next election or 4 years down the line, for voters to re-vote on whether appointed, so giving the voters an out. I think that one of the other things to think about at that point would also be term limits on those members. And I think the other thing to consider is potentially having a citizens nominating committee that makes those appointments for the school committee, and that they're not appointed by a mayor or city council, if that's the case. So I think those are some guardrails to consider if it was, if the recommendation from this review commission was a fully appointed school committee.
Can you flush out that committee part, like?
I'm concerned about political appointees. I'm concerned about who would be making the appointments and for what reason. You need people in office, mayors and whoever else, that are going to put people on a school committee that are there to defend the schools and the kids, that are there to put in a check and balance, and that put people in that have altruistic motives, that they are there to do better for others and to make our schools better. And I think the view, I don't want to get too political here, but the view of an appointed school committee, probably in everybody's minds right now, would change if Joe Biden was appointing them as the mayor, or Donald Trump was able to appoint the entire school committee. I think your view on an appointed school committee would change. The power never disappears when the voters have the choice as an elected representative. That's always there. That's totally gone. And so at least some citizens' input, if there was a fully appointed committee, would happen with some type of nominating, or maybe they're the actual decision makers on who is appointed to the school committee. Maybe it's a commission like this, but I think some way to not lose citizen voice there. I think losing the vote would be hard, but at least it would provide some level of citizen voice there.
So, Alan, it's on. I think it's on. The green light's on it.
It just got close to it.
I don't know if sunset, it's good to talk about now. If you want to say 10 years down the road, you could have some sunset legislation, but you'd need, if we did it, if we proposed it, the voters approved it, you'd need to give it probably 10 years anyway to see if it would work, particularly with the staggered terms, and there should be staggered terms. I think there can always be public input into the nominations that the mayor makes and the council ratifies, or vice versa. That can be split up and be some mayoral and some council appointments. But again, that process is always going to be impacted by the public. It's always going to have the opportunity to come in and either the mayor's nominations or opposed council nominations or approve them. So there's always going to be, I believe, a public process there because they'd be approved probably here at this meeting. So I think that can be built in also to, you call it guardrails, I don't know what you want to call it. But I think some of the thought was that you wanted a couple of people with financial backgrounds. I think some of the thought may have been that you wanted some educators, you wanted to make sure that there were parents involved. And I think that's what we're talking about if we would propose that those would be categories, maybe not guardrails, but maybe categories of appointees.
Yes. What I have to say is, I am a mother. I have 3 kids in public schools, and I am product of public schools as well. I don't believe there is enough in my view, there isn't enough research. I don't have enough material to make a decision. I want to go back home and look my kids in the eyes and tell them I made the right decision for you and for other kids. Therefore, I'm going to abstain of making any, not even recommendation at this time. I truly believe that this is an issue that will need more time to debate on.
At the end of the day, it's all about the kids' well-being. So I think we need more time. At this point, I'm not going to decide anything. So we'll just have to. That's fine.
Yeah, this isn't going up for a vote today or anytime soon. We don't have any proposals drafted. We don't have anything put together yet for us to even vote on. We're not even at that point, and I don't believe we thought we were going to be at that point today. I think when we started this discussion, we said it was going to be a long debate and a long discussion. So I don't, I think you're right. I think it definitely requires time in order for us to debate and discuss, but nothing's coming up for a vote today.
But you're both making good points. And this would somewhat be a rush to vote if we would have tried to hold that meeting on September 9th. We're talking about 3 weeks, and we've got 2 members of the Charter Review Committee, and probably they're not comfortable with the amount of information they've received to date to make a recommendation to the City Council. I think we need to discuss that because, again, I'm not necessarily comfortable with information that we've asked for, and I don't think we've received. I don't know how many communities we had. We asked to have other communities that had appointed school committees. I don't have anything in front of me about that. And so I think we ought to spend some time. If people are saying that they're uncomfortable now, this is going to be a rush job before September 9th. Because I don't believe we have the information.
Just quick, I want to respond to something John said, but another guardrail that we mentioned last meeting is if it was an appointed committee that, besides areas of expertise, that those individuals should be diverse enough to at least represent the student body that are in our schools. So I think there's a level of diversity there that needs to be considered if it wasn't fully appointed. Timing is an important thing. I mean, I've been thinking about that a lot too. Special election versus the amount of people that will come out for a regular election will be very, very different. People tend to be a little bit more in tune and motivated too for regular election. direction, so that's something to consider. I was able to actually get in touch with the Rhode Island School Committees Association, Tim Duffy, and his response was that the only appointed school committees are those that have currently been taken over by the state, Providence, Central Falls, and that's it in Rhode Island. The two that went to appointed, and the reason I said about some kind of sunset, whether it's 8 years or whatever it would be, the reason I went in that direction is because when Sock and North Smithfield went appointed and then reversed, when the voters had an issue that they all of a sudden realized they didn't really have the power to control or make those school committee members accountable. And so they reversed back to elected. And so one of the articles that had been provided talked about that type of law. But yeah, the timing that we have for this type of change is interesting. The other thing that the School Committee Association brought up was the models in Massachusetts, which I know you sent out for me. And I'm not a proponent of that necessarily. I just wanted to share that. But in Massachusetts, Taunton, New Haven, I think, New Bedford, what they've done to make the mayor truly accountable to increased school performance is that they have made an elected school committee and then made the mayor the chairman of the school committee, an actual voting member. And that way, what goes bad, what goes good in those schools, you know, the mayor certainly has say and control, but now responsibility for, instead of sort of being separated and that type of thing. So that's just another. That goes to the timing conversation because there are other models out there.
Yeah, I read that article that two other Maribel shared with the group. Then I don't know if I was crazy about that one. You know, I mean, you got to look at our community the way it's set up now. But I also thought about our community like we discussed at the last meeting. You know, 10 years from now. You know, eventually Don Gregory's not going to be the leader. Well, we'll see. Anyhow, you know, he's not, and the guys that are on the city council are not going to be, just like we're not going to be on the Charter Review Commission in 6 years. So I just, you know, I just wasn't crazy about that type of, but I appreciate the research. I really do. No, and I just wasn't crazy about that.
To clarify, we do, according to the charter, we have 1 year to complete and submit recommendations. So I think last year when we convened, we went through session and it was a general election, so we went through an election and put stuff on the ballot. We would have convened again this year for next year because we would have a year to propose, but you know, we can blame a certain congressperson for retiring or resigning. So we have a special election. We do have administrative things, not this particular issue, but we are going to be submitting a recommendation for the things that we have already talked about previously. So, you know, regardless, we're still making a recommendation to the city council with or without the school committee recommendation, is what I wanted to clarify.
I know we've just been discussing the appointed tonight, but we also brought up the hybrid previously too,
Yeah.
which might be another way to go. You know, either 4 and 3, 6 and 3, whatever. You know, again, these are recommendations to the city council. They can say, we're not going to do it, and then the voters can say, no way. So I mean, these are just recommendations that we're making here. So that's just another option that we had discussed previously that I don't think we should lose sight of.
I think back to your point, last year we recommended mayoral term limits, and that got struck down.
Yeah, city council said no. Yeah.
They have the power to put stuff on the ballot.
Yep.
Can I ask a question to John? Your experience on the city council and the ballot. All this work to put this detailed proposal that the city council may go through and that type of thing, has there ever just been a question that doesn't lead to a charter review change right away and just simply asks, should the city even investigate this?
You know, that's, we could propose that, the council can always put that on the ballot. The council's able to put any kind of a question like that on the ballot, and that might be the way to go. I'm just the discussion here tonight, the discussion we've had for the last month and a half, we are not going to have something I'm comfortable with presenting to the city council by September 9th, 6th.
Say it first. Just say it.
Yeah, I mean, I won't be comfortable putting my dot on a recommendation that we're hearing, and I do think it needs more work. I think it's a legitimate question, but I think we need to do a lot more work, at least that I'd be comfortable with submitting to the city council. City council can always put on the ballot on their own for the special election in November. Should the city of Pawtucket consider an appointed school committee? They could put that question. And I don't know that we're going to be that much better with what we propose than a question like that, if the council wanted to put that on the ballot. I'm just concerned that we don't have the time to give this the attention it needs. And we're talking about a branch of government that controls half of the spending or more in the city of Pawtucket. That's a big change in the governance of the community.
Agreed. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that it is a procedural timeline and not an act, like, we're not rushing it. I think if we decided that after September 6th, this needs more discussion, and we're in it until next July, when we can put it on the general election ballot, I think that's okay. I think that's also, I think we have to vote on that, and we need to think about that as we move forward in this discussion.
Yes, I would really suggest taking some time, because this is a serious issue, and taking some time and getting, if we have to make a proposal, to make it for the next election. But right now, I reiterate on that. We don't have enough time to do the thorough recommendation.
I'm just going to say, and I'm sorry if this is rambling, and just some thoughts that I have on the subject. I think from, my own reading, this question seems to come up when citizens, officials, etc., come to the point of, well, what should we do? We're not getting the outcomes that we want. We're not, seeing the performance that we want. And maybe in some respects it's grasping at straws, or it's just what change can we make? Some of the, I don't want to call it testimony, but some of the input we've had on this issue has arisen from episodes. For example, the superintendent search, or the COVID thing, or whatever those things are that are little points for people to trigger them to come forward and say we need change. And I don't know if those are necessarily justifiable reasons for it, but what I found most compelling, which Alan has talked about, and even Ms. Fernandez in some of her comments last week, and I appreciate her making them. She pointed, quite a bit to the makeup of school officials, the need for diversity to better reflect the student body. And, the one argument you could potentially make for this is it's very unlikely we will get to the diversity of the student body through the election process. I think typically we're going to see less diversity on an elected school committee. I think people are reluctant to come forward perhaps and run for office. I don't see in the last several elections that we've had a majority of people of color coming forward to run for election in this city and perhaps other cities. So, listening to her, and she may not have been making that point, but that's kind of the point that I hung on to is the best way to diversity may be appointing. That said, does that mean that proactively we will appoint the school committee if that was the methodology we were using that would truly reflect that? I'm not sure that would be the case either, honestly, but I think that's probably the way to get there, more likely than electing. And that's not necessarily advocating one way or the other. That, I think, is just, at least right now, with what we're seeing in the most recent elections, or even going back to, all of our past elections. I think that's probably the likelihood that we would see going forward.
Could I just add to that and just say that the concerns about the quality of an elected board or the diversity of an elected board, those concerns apply equally to every level of elected representation. And that goes back to that question I said, why the school board and not the city council? And so what is it that is the difference and why we're looking at that versus
Well, the main difference could be that the city council sets the tax rate, so that's a different interest. I think that's one of the key differences.
And I'll just add one other thing that I had come across. I think it was Virginia, and it was I think it was the head of the NAACP, and in Virginia, appointed school boards actually came from the history of Jim Crow laws, where they were keeping whites in power, particularly controlling the schools. And so there's a move to go elected. And the question that he asked was, how do we hold school boards accountable when you can't vote on their appointment? And that's an interesting question for us to consider. So how do we hold a fully appointed board accountable as a voter, as a citizen? What's the answer to that?
I would also add that, the other distinction with the city council is it's the legislative body. So do we have examples of legislative bodies that make the laws that are appointed? That's probably getting beyond the point of the...
Yeah, I think that's getting a little deeper into the weeds.
But just to say, Alan's question was why would we appoint one, not both? We generally don't appoint legislators to make the laws, so you're electing your legislators based on the direction you think they would set legislatively.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to that the answer in the end is that there's a want for more control. That's the answer, because every argument that anybody could make for an appointed school committee, we could make the exact same argument for an appointed city council, and yet nobody wants to talk about that. So, that's the thing. A little bit more layer of control there.
Who controls the budget for the school department?
The mayor.
School committee.
The mayor.
Well, in large part of the state and laws around maintenance of effort, those two things are what really define the budget, and the increases are then would have to be worked either from the state, sometimes the federal government
Does it
too.
go through the city council also?
Sure, yeah,
Good.
any increase to the schools from the city side certainly requires city council approval. Over the maintenance of effort. Maintenance of effort is required by law.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it sounds like to me that we are not moving forward with this discussion, or are we?
I think we should still discuss it. I mean, we still have meetings scheduled for the rest of the month. We need to discuss it. I mean, if we're not going to do anything in September, but we decide to maybe push forward to the next election, okay, we should still have this open discussion. And we, you know, everybody seems to have been doing research on it and different municipalities throughout the country. I mean, with the internet, you can look up anything anywhere. So I think we still need to have discussion, and then we can decide, you know what? Keep it as is. Or we want to change it, and here's what we want to do. But at least we will have done our due diligence
But
with those.
we could stop. We could say now that this is not something we will be proposing to the city council before September 6th. And it's something that the Charter Review Committee plans on looking into over the course of the next 9 months or so. And it takes what I think is the pressure that I feel that we're under to propose something to the city council. That's off the table. We get to a more relaxed pace and can do a more thorough research on what we end up proposing.
Agreed.
I'd like to make that a motion that this, the idea of an appointed school committee is not a recommendation. It will be presenting to the city council for the November ballot.
I second.
Should we do both? That should be both. So there's no motion. Okay. So we can table the motion for next meeting? Okay. So we'll table the motion for next meeting. Because it's not on the agenda to vote.
That's Secretary of State.
Before we move to public comment, do we have any other topics that the Charter Review Commission wants to bring up, other than the school committee? Is there anything else? We're not just here we were not appointed just to talk about school committee. As we were last year, we had other topics we wanted to discuss.
Is there a motion on the
I just want to bring
floor?
it up before we move on to public.
Is there a motion on the floor right now?
We can't vote.
Hmm?
We can't vote. It's not on the agenda.
So that's, yeah, I just want to throw it out to the committee. I mean, is there anything else that needs to be discussed? That's all. I don't have anything, but before we move to the next step, is there anything else?
I think, I mean, it's up to the committee if they want to take up what was struck down last year, but it's on us to make that decision. I believe the two things that were struck down by city council were mayoral term limits and city council term limits.
And again, Madam Chair, I don't think we should bring that up unless it's on our agenda.
Agreed. So I think that's the only other thing that would be brought up. So.
Just a question, when will we see draft language for the 3 of the 4 other questions? I know we have the 2-105 draft, which changes the inauguration time, but will we be seeing the advertisement of bids and purchasing language at some point?
We should be, I believe,
It would be good if it doesn't come right in the last meeting, so that if we need to.
Yeah, we can get that within the next week or so, so that we can send to the city council before the election. That's something that we all voted on and was approved. We just need to.
I believe we voted on
I thought we did. No? Okay, all
it.
right.
It could be voted.
Could be wrong. But we just need that. And put it on the agenda.
we be able to have that for our next meeting?
When is your next meeting?
Let's do that. We need to schedule our next meeting. Next Tuesday works for me.
Tuesday seems to be less. Good for you guys?
Tuesday works?
Yes.
All right, so next Tuesday, the 15th. 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. August 15th. 7. So, Frank, would we be able to get that by next Tuesday? Perfect. All right, so as soon as I receive it, I will
Good.
circulate that around. All right, are we good for public comment? Any public input? Yes. So we'll start off with public input. I believe we have some people on Zoom, so we'll start with the people who are here in person. We'll do 2 minutes per person. And we can start with Erin.
Hello. Good evening. My name is Erin Doobie. I have been deputy chair and chair of the school committee, but most pertinent to today, I chair the policy subcommittee. I recommend language changes to the full committee. In my role, it may be tempting to recommend sweeping changes solely based on my experiences and those in the small room I am in, but that would be both pompous and negligent. Instead, over many meetings, I gather outside research, I examine studies, I solicit input from affected people, and consider the implications of a recommendation so I can confidently back it. I am heartened to hear that there are members in this room who feel that they need to be in the same position, not just make a recommendation and let the voters decide, that instead they know that they personally support it. As to the matter, much of the justification seems to come from the belief that some decisions that the voter-elected school committee made recently were messy, not correct in your eyes, dysfunctional, maybe that the school committee is not as diverse as it should be. Follow that logic. See the dysfunction that's existed at times in our city hall, state house, and even White House. The decisions that are made that seem maddeningly wrong. The criminal prosecutions. The train wreck of Congress at times. The lack of diversity. And then imagine a group of people sitting around a table saying, maybe the voters can't be trusted to make good decisions. Maybe we know better than them. With that logic, the American experiment of democracy would have died many years ago. Instead, I continue to believe in the power of representative democracy and open government, despite the messiness. Indeed, I would have commented sooner, but agendas for this body did not meet the open meetings requirement of specifying the nature of the business to be discussed. And contact information for this commission on our mind is outdated, so I couldn't reach out to the members to share my views. This meeting itself was posted in violation of the 48 hours specified, which excludes weekends, as it is posted on Sunday morning. A meeting on July 5th was posted on July 3rd, also in violation of the Open Meetings Act. With these violations, you have left the public in the dark, a public who have said at previous meetings who cares so deeply about being educated. I urge you to consider the drastic recommendations you've been making, not only now, but to future generations, to undermine democracy. The long-reaching effects you could be having in not standing up and acknowledging that taking power away from the voters is never in the best interest of education. Thank you.
Adam Freeman. Would you mind stating your name for the record?
Sure.
Yep, good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Greenman, and I'm here tonight as a resident, as a concerned parent, and as somebody with a doctorate in educational leadership, which I think is important and pertinent to this conversation. And I want to say, I know public service is not easy. I know all of you are here as volunteers, and I appreciate the service that you're providing to this community by being a part of this and deliberating on this. And I'm heartened, actually, to hear the deliberation tonight that was much more measured, much more in favor of taking the time to actually examine this issue. And so I want to applaud you for doing that. And at the same time, I want to make sure that you continue on that path, that I hope to help you with some of the research that you're doing on your own, it sounds like. In this country, in the entire United States, 93% of school boards are elected. In Providence, in Woonsocket, in my hometown of Philadelphia, when those communities moved to appointed school boards, test scores did not go up. The local trend has moved away from appointed school boards. Providence has moved to a hybrid model. Woonsocket, as Mr. Tenrero said, in 2011 moved to an appointed school board, and by 2018 they were back to an elected because the accountability to the voters, to the population, wasn't there. Boston also has recently moved away from an appointed school board to an elected school board. I think the idea, and it's really heartening to hear that you're moving away from doing this in a rushed manner, doing it for an off-year election when we know voter turnout is much lower. This issue is way too important to not give it to the entire voting public, to do it in an election where we know turnout will be high. I want to speak to some of the concerns that I heard tonight. The idea that the school committee is not diverse. In the last 6 years, we've had Stephen Larby, Roberto Moreno, Marcia Fernandez, Sandra Cano, Elena Vasquez, all elected by the people. You say that the school committee made decisions that the public didn't agree with. In the last election, 3 of the positions on the school committee turned over. Almost half of the school committee turned over because the voters made a decision to have that happen. The voters are smarter than we give them credit for. And I have to say, the one thing that I want to keep in my remarks that I had, because I was pretty fired up when I wrote these, I watched your meeting last time. I heard you disrespect the voters. Not everybody. I heard one member talk about how all the voters go in and they just go down the list and they select the first 7 people. And I can tell you, as somebody who takes this very seriously, as a parent, and when I talk with other parents in the Pawtucket school system, we do not do that. And it's offensive to be told that we don't do our homework, that we don't understand this district, that we don't understand the people that we're voting for. It's offensive. And I hope that the person who made those remarks will make an apology to the voters and will make an apology to me. I think it's incredibly important that you continue this process of research. I'm really, again, heartened. I hope to see next week that you do vote to make this discussion go into next year, to get the notion of doing this on September 6th off the table. And Mr. Barry, I really appreciate you moving in that direction. And I want to say that I am here to be a resource to help in any way that I can, to assist you with research, with information. And again, I appreciate the work you're doing on behalf of the people of Pawtucket. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Alex Greenman.
Good evening, members of the Charter Review Commission. My name is Alex Greenman, and I am an incoming freshman at Jacqueline M. Walsh School for the Arts. As a future voter, I am here to stand up for democracy in my city. I frequently read the news and follow politics. I remember hearing about a recent Supreme Court case, Moore v. Harper, which would allow the federal authorities to set rules about federal elections. I was terrified. While not the same, I cannot help but draw parallels between that Supreme Court case and the legislature that has been discussed today. To have an appointed school board would mean no choice for the parents of Pawtucket to dictate who creates the policies that affect our schools so much. The school committee is responsible for many things pertaining to our schools, from everything to the food providers to the well-being of the students. An appointed school board would mean that the voters would have no say in what happens to the students of Pawtucket. We have a mayor who is of the Democrat Party now. However, with elections every 2 years, that may not always be the case. As an LGBTQ student, I fear what will happen if the mayor appoints the school committee that could take away the rights of myself and my fellow students. The mayor should not have the power to affect schools and the 8,000 students that attend them. I beg those on the Charter Review Commission to consider their decision and to think of the effects that this could have on our community. We need a school committee that thinks for themselves, not one that does the mayor's bidding. Thank you for your time.
Representative Sheree Cruz.
Thank you, and thank you for your time to hear that you're volunteering, and especially to those who believe in our elections and to elect who the voters feel are right for these positions. I'm Sheree Cruz, a state representative. I'm also a grandmother and guardian of a student here in Pawtucket schools. I also have a background in education and advanced degrees in urban education policy. So we've debated this many times in my university. And to move away from the elected school committee is just flying in the face of democracy and what many had said, you know, the respect to the voters who put them there. So for me, I just can't believe I'm here arguing this, debating this, or speaking on this, that we need to respect that of the voters and the school committee. And, you know, I hear some things about diversity, and I'm glad someone pointed out that we're going in the right direction. So to turn around and go to appointed, like many other cities and towns had done, and back again, and thinking about the churn of those policy decisions and what it had done on education, we need to stop here right now. If people are not happy, they get 2 years to re-elect them. I know everyone I voted for, I was knowledgeable, I looked up for, and they got elected. I knew what I was doing. I'm a voter, right? Just like the rest. And a parent as well, and grandparent in the school system. So I'm not going to sit here and, you know, I'm very frustrated, as you can tell. And in addition, we talked about diversity, and we see more people running for office like myself. I'm someone who never would have run for office, an underdog. But I gotta tell you, what needs to happen is not here, that's discussed here, is about getting parents involved, students involved, things like PTSOs and advisories to groups. That's something I had done for a parent is 20 years. And what that done was empower and educate more who are invested and directly impacted to run. That's what needs to be discussed, not changing and going in the wrong direction. So I just wanted to share that. And with the guardrails are the elected school committee. That's the guardrails. That's how we hold people accountable, is through our elections. So thank you again for your time and all of your input on this.
Representative Jennifer Stewart.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your time and attention to these important issues. I want to just highlight a couple of things really to, I think, amplify the eloquent statements that have already been made this evening on this issue of appointed school committees and making what to my mind is a pretty radical governance change in the school committee. When I was talking to voters in the 59th district, schools and the quality of Pawtucket schools came up again and again. The parents in my district were knowledgeable about the school committee and deeply concerned about the performance of the Pawtucket schools. And so, to my mind, if any governance change is going to be considered, there's a few important questions that have to be addressed. And the first is, what's the best for improving student outcomes? Secondly, what's best for accountability? And in this case, it's accountability to parents, public trust. Just some cursory research on my part suggests that places that have made this change from elected to appointed school boards have done so as a reaction to some kind of violation of the public's trust in the school committee. And I was wondering what that was in this case to lead to a discussion of making such a change. And lastly, what's best for cultivating an engaged citizenry here in Pawtucket? And I would just encourage you, unless you can say with confidence that an appointed school board will facilitate yeses to those questions, it feels like a bad anti-democratic move to make for all the reasons that you've heard. So I was heartened tonight to hear that you will slow this process down to investigate further. There's a lot of expertise in Pawtucket and in our state at our universities on education policy that can help the city of Pawtucket improve its schools. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Glenn, default.
I'd like to.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Glenn Dufault. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Pawtucket. I'm also a single parent of two 11-year-old twins that are moving on to Slater Junior High School this year after their whole entire time at McLean Arena Elementary School. When I found out about this today, it disheartened me. I'm trying to raise my children to follow everything the correct way, and it's like you want to take away their democracy and teach them that they can't vote or anything like that. How did we even get to this? This was nowhere to be found. Channel 12, when I called them in the newsroom, they couldn't even find this meeting to send somebody down here. As a voter, I would never vote for anything like this. You're trying to take away our rights. Now, I personally believe that this came from the mayor's office, and I don't care if it knows, it does not bother me at all. Because I believe approximately a year ago, when the mayor approached the school committee and asked to borrow money to support this soccer stadium, and the school committee shot him down, stating this money, you can look at it, Barry, and like say, turn your head and roll your eyes, things. I don't take that crap. Okay? So, the school committee shot him down for taking that money. Okay? And now here we are, we're trying to eliminate the school committee and put appointments. Why? This doesn't seem like coincidental. And how did this even come about to come up on a charter? I'm a lifelong resident of the city. I had never ever heard this come up before, to take 9 elected positions away from the citizens of Pawtucket and create more power onto the second floor, if that's what the mayor's office is, of this building. Everybody who does know that attends meetings knows that the council is controlled by the mayor's office. And now you're trying to get the school committee going so that can be controlled by the mayor's office as well. Too much power is no good. And you're setting bad examples to children that are coming up. So once again, how did we get to this point? Is it because there's a vindictive viciousness because of the school committee voted down, giving the city money? And that's why we're here? And you guys all have to answer to the mayor because you said it earlier, you're appointed by the mayor. You all have to answer that. I'm glad that some of you guys are going in the right direction from what I've seen. I don't think you'll be on this committee after that. But I do have a question for you, Mr. Barry, and I'm not singling you out, but because you were an elected person, I keep hearing that, well, yeah, we should appoint lawyers and doctors. When you were elected to the council, what did you bring? Was you a lawyer or a doctor, or was you just someone who felt like, hey, I can do good for the constituents of this city. I'm going to run for office and let the people decide to let me vote in. And then how many terms did you do? You did a good job. You kept getting voted back in. But was you a lawyer or a doctor? Like, what? I'm not a lawyer or a doctor. I know how to argue. So I wouldn't be able to run because I can't bring nothing to the plate because I'm not a lawyer or a doctor. But so, like, was you something like that when you ran?
Public input, it's time for you to say what you want to say. It's not for members of the committee to respond to your questions.
I'm just asking why it's being singled out that we need doctors and lawyers and since when? That makes no sense. Heck, when I run for 6th District, I'm not a doctor or a lawyer. I'm going to let the people decide. So I just really want to know how we are at this point. I think it's because the school committee that was elected by the people shot down the mayor's office to borrow money to cover that stadium, and magically we're here trying to get rid of the school committee. Does it make sense? Because I know I was born in life, but not last night. I can put 2 and 2 together. So why don't we, like somebody said earlier, the city council, why don't they be appointed? Because they don't want to lose that job, right? And it should be brought back up in this charter commission, put appointed terms. When people get too comfortable in a seat, okay, they get real comfortable and then things go horrible. When the seat starts moving, that's when things change. Like we have a chain of command. We have a first, second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain. We keep moving seats. When you're in a seat for too long, you get too comfortable. Time to move on. That should be brought back up in this charter, and it shouldn't be shot down by the city council. It actually should go to the voters. And I guarantee they'll vote on that. We shouldn't be talking about taking away 9 positions from voters.
Thank you.
All right, I got to summarize this. Ridiculous why we're here with this.
Richard Addison.
Good evening. My name is Richard Addison. November I'll be 83. I've been born over there on River Street where Apex is, and I spent my entire life as a resident of the city of Pawtucket. All except for the 4 years that I took on the responsibility of fighting for this country as the United States Marine. This is my home. It hasn't always been a home that I was proud to be here. But tonight I came down because someone said something about changing from an elected school committee to a committee appointed by the mayor. Now, I've known the mayor. I knew his dad, I knew his mom. The same thing with Henry Chin, the other mayors. But like I said, I grew up here, so I know all of these mayors and these politicians. To think that the people of Pawtucket should allow the mayor to appoint committees. If you did an investigation on some of the people who are sitting on some of these committees that the mayor has appointed, should tell you an awful lot. I remember talking to Don Grevian a couple of years ago, and I said to Don, Donald, I think I should get more involved with politics in Pawtucket. For many years, I tried in the past John Barry would remember back in the days when I started an organization called PUMA, People United for Minority Advancement. Well, the Black and Cape Verdean and Hispanic population back then wasn't what it is today. But we were successful to get the city of Pawtucket to hire its first Black police officer, Ronnie House. We were also successful in getting the 2 Black firefighters, Eddie Addison, God rest his soul, that's my cousin Eddie, and Mackie Walls. I went to high school with some of these guys who became mayors, and got to know them pretty well. But this group here tonight, I think it usually appointed by the mayor. And this is something that should be done. But I don't think it should be done when you're going to discuss if we're going to have the mayor appoint the school committee or the election. Constitution starts off, we the people. We the people. I don't want to tell you this, but the gentleman from New York, he was the first governor of New York, Governor Monroe, I think his name was. He's the one that came up with that. Everybody talks about John Adams with the Constitution. He came up with we the people. And he didn't get much credit for it because they found out that he stole it from the guys who wrote the Magna Carta. So he said, we the people. Every position that is paid by tax money from the residents, the mayor, the chief of police, I think all of them should be we, the people who choose these people, to allow a person to say, all right, now that I'm mayor, I'm going to appoint a school committee. For whatever reasons, I don't know why, there was a change of heart.
30 seconds.
30 seconds? Okay. We disabled vets deserve a little more time.
Yes.
Hoorah. But the thing is, if what you do has to go before the city council, and then the city council can take all the time and effort that you put in and just throw it away and say, we're going to put up our thing on the ballot, then you people are wasting your time. And when it hits the ballot, when they put it on the ballot, then it becomes we, the people. If we're going to vote to put it down or to lift it up, and I think the way it's worded is very important. We, the people. We, the people. I don't want to feel like I'm in Florida where we've got this Ron DeSantis saying, I'm going to take over everything. I'm going to run the school committee. I'm going to run this. I'm going to run that. And that seems to me, if the mayor came up with this idea, that's what he's trying to do. Don't give him too much power. And I think we should have discussions on term limits for people who were on committees from the mayor. Because I know of a couple of cases where women are on this committee, and the same woman is on another committee, and the same woman is on another committee, and those are not volunteers where they don't reach some stipends. They get paid. So let's have term limits. I asked Don to put me on the committee. He said, yeah, send me your resume. I reservation been down in Don's office now, I would say, the last 6 years. And I got a letter, thank you for applying. But at this present time, there are no committees that I feel comfortable to put you on. Thank you and have a good night.
I believe Crystalina wanted to address you before you left. Sorry.
Just a minute. It was in regards to the statement that I made about voters going to the step and down the line. And I made that statement based on my experience, and I did not say all voters. I said a lot of voters, and that's based on the experience that I have with the community, but what I hear and what I see, because I am very involved in the community. I appreciate your input, but that's what I just wanted to, make a correction there. I did not say all voters, but a lot of voters.
Intention is really important. Even if you intended for it to come out like that, it came across to voters as if you were saying all voters. And so as public officials, because that is what you are now, I would say be very careful about how you address those kind of things and how you make those statements. And I understand you don't want to apologize for it, but I would say it's really important to be careful with your words. So, thank you.
But that made it clear, but not by saying a lot of voters and not just voters. That already speaks for itself.
All right, on Republican, please. Adam, hang on a second, Adam. Oh, I wanted to hear what.
All right, so the next person we have is Christine Benta.
Yeah, it wasn't that pathetic, I was doing. Well, I was hoping Adam would stuck around for a minute because I know what point he was making. And the point that I'm going to start off with is the dangers of anyone trusting Donald Brumbian to appoint anybody to anything is exactly the point that Adam was making earlier, right? And no disrespect, but this committee right here, this board, is the perfect example of it. I'm going to say thank you to the two of you who I do recognize. I don't recognize anybody else except for that. Because you guys were all appointed as our leaders. You two ladies were honest enough to say that, slow down. We don't know enough information about this. Thank you for that. Because it is being rushed, and there's a reason why it's being rushed. And with going along with what Adam has said about the first meeting that I watched, I was completely disturbed. And this is what happens when I am a well-known community leader in this community. I didn't know if any of this was going on. And the mayor gets to go out of his way and appoint a member to this committee by the name of Joe Tomorrow, who's not here tonight to defend himself, but he's going to watch this and he's got a big mouth. But for him to appoint someone like that, that's not locally from Pawtucket, and appoint him as our community leader. He is not our community leader. Let's just make that clear. Definitely not one of my community leaders, and I'm one of the leaders of the Cape Breton community. And for Joe to be sitting in this panel to represent the Cape Breton community in the city of Pawtucket is insulting to me. I'm not going to have it. Because he was the one who sat here on that first video that I watched. I'm not sure if you went along with what he said, Ms. Lita. I didn't hear that part. But I sat here. As a matter of fact, let's rewind a little bit. I sat in the polling station during the last election and watched Joe DeMora walk elderly Cape Verdean people into the polling station and acted like a translator and showed them how to vote. Then I watched him sit here and say, not here, wherever he was sitting, that he doesn't know what he's voting on when he comes to the school committee. He just checked off the first 7, which means he was telling everybody else to do the same thing. How dare you not know what you're doing because you're not locally from here, don't know anything about this community, but you're misleading everyone in the community that you took to the polling station because you gave them a ride to help them translate what they were doing. And then sit on this panel and speak on behalf of all of us that we don't know how to vote. I wish Erin Doobie stayed here for a second too, because she would have heard, she would have known. I've been at school committee meetings as a mother, as an advocate, as a leader, as whatever it is. I've been there. I was part of the lunch shaming issue that was going on, that they claimed wasn't going on, but then they fixed it. You fixed something that wasn't going on, but okay, let's go with that. Was me and Erin bumping heads? Absolutely. I was bumping heads with them all. But contrary to what you said earlier, that maybe an appointed might get more minorities in, no. That stems from the whole issue that we were having 5 years ago with the school committee, and because we voted is why we have Marsha. Marsha wasn't appointed. She got voted in. Don't remind me of the time, thank you very much. She got voted in because we had enough of what was going on before. Marsha stood here as a community, as a school committee member, and wasn't even recognized by any of you guys because nobody knows who the school committee members are. That's embarrassing. But anyways, she is voted in by us because Pawtucket is majority minority, in case y'all didn't know that. She was voted in by us. We knew exactly what we were doing. And now we have a minority superintendent. Uh-oh. A lot of people don't like that, but guess what? We do. How did that happen? Because we voted in the right people in the school committee. Did I vote for Erin Doobie? Absolutely. Did I bump heads with Erin Doobie all these years, for at least 5 years? Yeah. But I voted her back in. Why? Because I don't go by my personal issues. I go by the job that they're doing. Do I like Jay Chavanaugh? Well, I'm a public person. It's very known that I don't. But at the end of the day, he's still there. Why? Because we knew what we were voting on. So for this appointed committee to come and tell us that we don't know what we're doing and we're going to let the mayor appoint more, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. You guys shouldn't even be saying this, and the council shouldn't be saying this idea either. Because if we give the mayor more power, we're going to be in deeper, I'm not going to say it. I can disagree with the politics of the city all I want, and I'm not going to hold you guys responsible or be personal about what you're doing. I understand that most of you probably had no idea this was going to land on your lap. And now that it is, don't rush it, because that's what the mayor wants. He's not happy. I agree with what the gentleman said about the funding. He wants money. Yeah, of course, we all know that's what he wants. Let's not hide that. He's also not happy about the new superintendent, because she's not going to let him do whatever he wants to jeopardize my minority students in these schools. He knows that, and he's mad that she got voted in. Too bad. Don't take that power away from the parents. That's all I'm saying.
Can we get the person from Zoom first as he raises his hand?
Well, that's the phone. I will.
Ben Evans, if you'd like to speak, you're unmuted.
Thank you, and thanks to the members of the Pawtucket Charter Review Commission. I appreciate the chance to speak, and I appreciate your volunteer service to our city. And also thank you to all the wonderful people from Pawtucket who spoke earlier, because frankly, they made a lot of good points, a lot of clear arguments why having an appointed school board would be a disaster for Pawtucket, for the children of Pawtucket, our students. And I want to just echo everything that was said. Uniformly, every speaker who came into comment here said, don't do this. Don't do it. Don't put forward some sort of recommendation that we would have an appointed rather than an elected school committee. And I'm also trying to convey that position as well. And I'm glad to hear that you all are reconsidering, trying to rush this through. and considering it more carefully. And I hope that this ill-advised plan to have a appointed school board would be abandoned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Cal.
Hi, my name is Pat Ford. I'm with the Coalition Radio Network. We're a media company based at 10 Admiral Street in scenic Providence, Rhode Island. I spend a lot of time here in Pawtucket. It's sort of my second home in terms of coverage. Just wonderful points already been made, so let me just go over some structural issues. First off, this is the third meeting I've attended. You still have yet to establish any connection between school performance and school committee actions at any level. I would challenge all of you. Last week I was here when a member of the school board was here and spoke, and it was clear that most of you had no idea who she was or the fact that she sat on the school board. So I would actually challenge you to name the members of the school board and what individual qualifications they have. I go to probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 100 school committee meetings a year across the state. I don't know any of these folks personally, but I will tell you that you are uniquely blessed here in Pawtucket. I find great irony in this, if you knew me personally. You have arguably one of the better school boards in the state, which includes, by the way, an educational expert, someone who does high-level facilities management, as well as a number of folks who have, at a high, near C-suite level, have corporate experience, which would touch on the law. So you already have, chosen by the voters, and by the way, for the most part, endorsed by the very mayor who wants to oust these folks because he didn't play poker with him on the $1 million from the school board. You probably have one of the best school boards in the state. So make yourself crazy, go ahead. Because what I'm going to turn around and say to all of you, I'd love to give you all a civic exam. Because over the last 3 weeks, I've heard comments made which display from a number of you. And you're all, I'm not challenging your honor or your intelligence. You also like wonderful people. But I would wonder if you folks have a thorough understanding of the city charter in this town. And I would want to put a quiz to you. Because based on the comments and the questions that have gone in these meetings, all right, I don't know that you do. So I'm not sure how you can change a city charter that you don't understand thoroughly. Crazy. And just finally, to wrap it all up, I want to talk to the 3 meetings we've had so far. No structure, no agenda, no expert witnesses. It reminds me largely, again, well-intentioned people, some very smart people here, and a lot of folks in touch with the community, but it reminds me largely of bowl sessions that I attended in college, sitting around a dorm room where 3 groups of people sat around and chatted aimlessly, probably with good intent, about just generic issues and the same issues. If you were to go back and listen to the 3 recordings, I recorded all of them, and you'd be glad to know that I've shared them with the world. I would say to you that you all sort of, between the pregnant silences, the uncomfortable pauses, I don't know what you're doing here. There's no structure to this. When are we going to see expert witnesses? When are we going to see testimony? When are we going to see some sort of basic outline? When are we going to see anything? So, that's all I got for tonight, but, one last thing. The notice thing, you noticed this meeting Sunday at, 10:30 in the morning? If I can file, I'm just going to let you know right now, if in fact, after I talk to my attorney tomorrow, I can file an open meetings violation against any of these meetings, I will be. Because it is to discuss issues of this gravitas, if you will, with so little notice, not issued. I couldn't, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I couldn't find them in the secretary. I couldn't find the meetings anywhere. I had to dig past the Charter Commission from 2015 that's still named on your website. So this strikes me as a political stunt meant to aim some sort of political weapon at a highly qualified school committee that continually displays great integrity amongst difficult situations and amongst constant interference by the people in this building. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to force these folks into making decisions that are not in the best interest of the school district. And it's the same type of logic that brought you the GAM Theater, they're gone. The hospital, they're gone. The Pawtucket, they're gone. The stadium, $10 million for ARPA money for a stadium, and you can't afford to feed people in the city. Sounds like somebody else should be appointed as opposed to elected. Thank you.
Oh, by the way, are you going to read the emails from other people who have sent you?
When they're received, I have
Now,
read them.
tonight, are there other emails from people in the community?
I would have read them into the record already.
But you read, the last couple of weeks, you made a point of reading them to the community. I don't see that attitude. Now that the public actually knows they can send emails here, that they can be read, I don't see that same, what's the term, alacrity? Yes, that's my word of the day. The urgency. So are there emails and will you read them?
Is there any public notice in the Valley Breeze so people that get the free
They
paper
let-
can see this?
Respectfully, because you're very in tune with the community, and I applaud that. The last two meetings, my understanding is you read emails out loud. Are you going to do that tonight?
All right, meeting adjourned, 8:25.
You're not going to read the emails out loud? We have people in this room who sent emails, and you don't want to read them out loud because, Don, I know you're watching somewhere, you don't want to because they disagree with the approach you're taking. So why won't you read the emails that you've been sent? Yeah?
I haven't received any.
You haven't received any. Funny. Has anyone here sent an email to the community? Oh, here we go. Perhaps you'd like to read the email that you sent. Please step right up. Yeah, go ahead, read it. I'll record it. All that matters is what's on video. If you want us to read it, I'll record it.
What? Yeah, that's that should be pretty specific. Hi, Joanne.
I guess not. Good.
Who's the chair?
She's the chair.
I didn't have a vote to adjourn.
Was there a vote to adjourn? And what was the vote count? I'm funny. I'm going to go back to my recording. If you didn't adjourn the meeting properly, I'm going to sue you.
So are you going
all right?
to ignore this
You
man
need
right here?
listen to what the citizens have to say.
Are
You
you
made
going to
sure
ignore this man right here?
you made sure that a state appointee to the state senate got to read theirs. All right. You made sure that a member of the Providence. No, I'm pointing right at you because you're the lawyer, you're the chair, you know better.
It was sent to, and I had a return email stating it was going to be sent out to you as the chair, and you were going to pass it along to the members of the commission.
Funny how that happens. Must be a coincidence. What are the odds? That must be it.
That's what you mean by no structure.
Yeah.
This is who we're trusting to make decisions for us.
Yeah.
Someone who's gonna completely ignore this man.
They really don't mean anything, because whatever they do still has to go before the city council. So what they do is
It's the
don't
perfect
waste their
example
time.
of why they shouldn't be appointed, because they're rude and obnoxious.
Yeah, but they,
Why did you read, Madam Chair, why did you read the emails last week and the week before?
Because the school committee did its job.
well, they were sent.
These were sent to the committee. So you're acting in, so if I sue, I can sue you personally now? Is that what you're telling me? Because I've got that on camera. You're an attorney.
That's fine. I know that everybody here.
In the halls of justice, justice is in the halls.
Welcome to Pawtucket, my friend.
I will be at the next meeting to read it aloud on the agenda. And then
What depends? Are they going to put the agenda on this one at 11 at night? In disappearing ink?
well, I'll tell you,
What a bleep show. You know what Bugs would say at a moment like this? I looked at we're live, by the way. At a moment like this, Bugs Bunny speaks to me. You know what Bugs would say?
No.
What a bunch of maroons. Good night, folks. In the halls of justice, justice is in the halls. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. On the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. And of course, the mothership at CoalitionRadioNetwork.com. It's been a full and rewarding day. Please, if you have a moment, like and share our social media. Have a great night. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Hey, tomorrow night, BLM debate. be there. If you can't, you got to work, you got the kids. Conditions permitting, we'll stream it. Thank you so much. Good night.